Hello everyone. If you haven't watched my previous episode on relationships, then well, good for you. Because this time I'm going to be a bit more legitimate because we aren't talking about romantic relationships and instead we are talking about anything in general, any relationship in general, which would include family, friends, colleagues, etc. Either way, many of us, me included, still aren't sure what an adult is. Like, it's so much easier to understand kids and maintain a relationship with one because it's a lot less complicated. I'm not kidding. Like, kids are generally a lot more honest and frank, and it's a lot easier to know how to talk with them and stuff. But with adults, it's a whole nother story. So why am I still doing this in a serious manner? It seems like I'm no expert on this topic to begin with. Well, yeah, you're right. I do admit I'm not an expert on this, but I know there's a few general things that can help in any relationship. And I'm talking about relationship in the general sense and not romantic sense, so at least I can talk about it. I'm gonna explain these things for your own good. Yay. So the first thing is, well, it's important to understand each other well. So that's the first thing. And this because sometimes when doing something that involves both of you, so I'm going to use scenarios where there's two people, but you can apply this to any number of people. So when you're doing something that involves both of you, you would need the point of view of the other party as well. For example, let's say you decide to start a new project and you and your colleague are involved in this project and your colleague needs breaks because otherwise he'll get stressed while you are very enthusiastic about it and really just want to do the same thing 24/7. I don't know, possible. But in that scenario, you can't really force your colleague to do the same thing that you're doing, aka work without any breaks whatsoever, because that would be detrimental to your colleague and to his mental health, for example. So it is important to understand the colleague well and then allow him to take breaks when he needs it. And apart from understanding, you should know each other well in basic things like likes and dislikes, dietary restrictions, other cultural practices or restrictions, phobias, if they're relevant to what you're doing, for example, etc. So, for example, if you're bringing someone like me to a restaurant and that restaurant has no vegetarian options, that would be a bad idea because, well, I'm a vegetarian, so I think it was obvious from the fact that I said it was a bad idea. And also, I'm a bit picky and I tend to be quite wary of, contamination and stuff. So let's say if I go to a food court and there's like a kai fan store and there are some vegetarian options, but I generally wouldn't want to buy from there just because I'm scared of contamination from the other stuff. Like they touch this and they touch that kind of thing. But a vegetarian stall is okay for me, so yeah, that's my level of pickiness, I suppose. So yeah, understanding each other well and knowing each other well is important. But in order to actually understand and know each other, communication is key. So that's the second thing, which is communication. I mean, that's pretty much how information is spread from one human to another. Like, you need to communicate in order to spread this piece of information anywhere. So be sure to tell the other party anything you feel that is important for them to know, because sometimes even when you try to get to know each other better, sometimes there's things that you miss out. So, or maybe I might forget to tell people that, oh, I'm vegetarian. But if we go eat somewhere, I have to tell them in order for them to understand that, oh, okay, you have this issue. So you have to make sure to include you when we go somewhere, for example. But usually I just bring my own food, so seems I usually make it easier for them. Yeah, okay, cool. But there is another reason why I mentioned communication. You need to communicate properly. So communication is one thing, but it needs to happen properly. Because miscommunication is a thing, especially since we have like texts and stuff that, you can't really convey emotions per se unless you use emojis a lot. You just type something out. You can't really tell what's the tone of the message. You just see, oh, some words. And that's why people nowadays tend to use more of the, slangy words that help to add a little bit of tone, and also emojis. But generally, they tend to be problematic, and miscommunication is pretty problematic in general. It can lead to a lot of problems. So to ensure miscommunication doesn't happen, you have to know that both the sender and recipient can understand the message fully. So in order to do this, my way of saying it is trying to establish the lowest common denominator of your communication. I know this sounds very maths, but I'm not talking about maths. I'm just saying like the thing that you both of you can understand for sure. Like make sure that you can both understand. So for example, if you have if you're close friends with someone, you could even go as low as like inside jokes and code language that you guys have, because you would still understand it. But if you're talking about if you're talking with someone else who's not so close to you, or if you're just talking with someone who knows but that person kind of knows Singlish a lot, you can definitely talk in Singlish with your, in your hawker center or somewhere. And if you're talking with me, I may know a bit of Singlish, but I'm not that great. I'm not like super 100% able to do it. So you can talk with me in English with some Singlish undertones. But if you're talking to someone who came from overseas for sure, then you definitely want to talk in standard English. So you get the idea. You need to know what's the lowest common denominator of what you can talk, like what amount of secretive language or slang you can use with that other person. And also when you're talking in text messages and things like that, what is the lowest common denominator of description that you require for the other person to understand you. So it's not really just about language, but also about the amount of description that you want to give, the amount of details that you require for the other person to understand your message, both in terms of the content as well as the emotion. So do be aware of this and try to minimize miscommunication. But if in the event that you actually don't understand something, like maybe someone sent you a message, like you can't really expect them to be able to do that every time, like be able to communicate everything at one go every time. So if let's say you see something and you feel like it feels like there could be a miscommunication, then try your best to think about it, think whether there's actually potential miscommunication, or if it actually is the message that they wanted to send. And if you feel like there's some kind of miscommunication, then do ask them to clarify the message for you, so that it's easier for you to understand what they're saying, and to prevent conflicts in a sense. But of course, when miscommunication does happen and causes conflicts, well, the third thing that you need to know is how to resolve conflicts in order to not break your relationship. So sometimes conflicts lead to arguments, and when that happens, you should understand the other's point of view while balancing it with your own point of view. So you need to know both your point of view and the other person's point of view, and then take note of the potential arguments in both points of view, and see whether there's a common ground that you can get, and see whether there's a compromise that you can get with both of these point of views, because usually they're not entirely against each other. There might be some commonalities, and you can definitely find something that you can use as a compromise. So you should try not to be like too self-serving. Try to be a little bit of self-serving plus other serving. So do a bit of both, so that you won't be leaving it with nothing, and the other party will also not be leaving it with nothing. So both of you are happy, and both of you get a compromise, and this will help to solve the conflicts, hopefully. But if the other kind of thing that can happen when there's a conflict is that, if there's no argument, but the two of you are just having this passive aggressive silence, then what you should do is to be proactive in coming up with a compromise beforehand. Like, if you actually know the point of view, then you can come up with a compromise, and then maybe suggest it calmly to the other party. Please don't argue it and shout it at them. Instead, talk about it calmly and composedly, in the sense. Or if you don't really know about it, or if you don't know what to say, or if the other party has objections to what you already said, listen to them, listen to their point of view, because you can't really know the point of view all the time. So you need to listen to them, communicate in order to understand. And from there, you can see how to accommodate the request, or if you feel like there's something like their request isn't accommodatable in the sense, then you should respond to them without making it like a very big argument kind of thing. Don't heat it up and make it a big argument in the sense. Yeah, so that's how you should resolve conflicts. But in order to resolve conflicts between each other and to prevent conflicts, another thing that you actually need is trust. So the last thing that we'll be talking about is trust, and trust is pretty important because it's the thing that keeps the relationship going when you can't really see each other physically. So in order to establish trust, you need to be comfortable with the relationship in general, and also you need to treat the other party fairly. So you cannot just be the one dominating the relationship all the time, and you cannot really like be submissive all the time as well. So you need to give fair treatment of each other. And you also need to understand the other party as well and be committed to what you're doing. If you're doing a project together, you have to be committed to the project. If you are a family member of that person, you have to be committed to understanding them and accommodating them in whatever thing that you do. And if they're your friend also, if you want to be friends with them, then you have to accommodate them as well and understand them and be committed to being friends with them. So after establishing trust, as well as trusting the other person yourself, well, this trust can be broken, because if it's broken, then your relationship is pretty much gone. So in order to maintain trust, you would need to not do something drastic without first consulting the other party. And at the same time, if the other party decides to tell you, oh, I need to do this particular thing, and you're a little bit, shocked by it, don't be drastic about it. Don't react immediately or drastically. Think about it for some time and then give your opinion on that thing that you're deciding to do. So for example, if you're looking at a family, for example, maybe the kid would trust their parents to not react negatively if they trust them that the parents won't just chase them out of the house. Then of course they will tell them about their relationships and about all of the major decisions that they do. But in some houses, parents do react very negatively to what the kid says, and therefore the kid kind of keeps it hidden forever because they don't really know how to go about doing what they want to do in life without agitating their family in the sense because it leads to backlash and eventual distancing. So in that scenario, I guess the kid doesn't have any trust in their parents anymore. So yeah, that's why it is important to trust each other. So I hope you all remember all of these things, which, if you want me to summarize, would be the understanding each other plus knowing each other. Then second is communication, and try to avoid miscommunication. Third would be resolving conflicts, be proactive about it, and try not to argue too much, and do it in a calm manner. And four would be keeping trust with each other and maintaining the trust with each other. So do remember all of these. And before we end, there's one last thing I would like to say, is that relationships are complicated. Don't fret it if you feel awkward at the beginning of a relationship, or if you still end up messing it up here and there, because that's just how relationships work. They're quite hard to navigate. It's much easier to do a maths test than to navigate a relationship properly. So hopefully experience will guide you with the passing of time, and you'll be a little bit better at it the older you get, in the sense. So right, it's the end of the video, and I hope this video helps you in your everyday life, unlike the previous adulting one, because that was just a joke. But if that actually helped you, then I have nothing to say. But if this video was helpful, well, please press the like button and subscribe. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bye!